Hello friend, welcome back to my channel. In this video tutorial, I'm going to be sharing some specific tips for creating foil lettering without a foil machine or a laminator. All you need is some foil and this quickie glue pen. The process is really simple, but there are some tips that I've found to help prevent some issues that can come up with foil lettering. So in this video, I'm going to share 6 tips with you to help you create foil lettering. First things first, I'm using foil that I purchased a long time ago in a store and I can't 100% remember what the brand is. I think it's Heidi Swap, but I can't be sure, so I will link some foil below that I have heard great things about and what I will probably purchase when this is gone. And I'll also link this quickie glue pen, which also happens to work for embossing. So tip number 1 is to write at a consistent pace. It might be tempting to write really slowly so that you can create a really thick line of glue, but in my experience that actually looks a little bit more messy. So I recommend just going at a nice, even but steady pace where you're not getting too thick of a line, but you're also not going so quickly that it feels scratchy on the paper. We are just going for a nice, solid, consistent line throughout. Tip number 2 is probably the most important tip, and that is to let the lettering dry for a long time. You might naturally think that you should letter quickly and then get the foil on right away before it dries, but in my experience, that is not the way to do it. So when I was doing the lettering for these in this video, I left it for several minutes, but you could probably leave it for several hours and it'd still be great. But in my experience, what I'd recommend is like 5 to 10 minutes. When I first tried this out, I did it in a video for my lettering membership group, and I tried just letting the glue dry to where it looked visibly dry, and that was not long enough. The lettering kind of smeared and looked a bit messy, but in my experience, I've had a lot more success when I let it dry for a little while and then come back and put the foil on later. Now, when you go to add your foil on top, you're going to do it so that the color of your foil is facing up at you, and the more silver side is going to go onto your lettering, which leads me to tip number 3, and that is use a sleeve or a cloth to rub over your foil, and don't push too hard. When I first tried this, I was pushing super hard and I was kind of squishing my lettering down, but I found that just a really gentle but steady pressure was great. I found that using my sleeve was a bit easier for me, so I could kind of glide across the paper, and that was just easier for me than using my fingers. I would recommend to try not to move the foil around, so you might want to kind of hold the foil from the edges with one hand and then rub the lettering with the other hand. I found that different pieces of foil stuck differently, so sometimes the foil would move around quite easily if I wasn't holding it steady. And tip number 4, the next tip is to use smooth paper. Now in my experience, I seem to have a cleaner transfer when I was using smooth paper compared to a more textured paper. You can see that in this video where the more textured craft paper was the least solid foiling. For the white paper, I was using HP Premium 32 paper, which I love for brush lettering, so I recommend that all the time anyway. And the black paper is just a smooth cardstock that I've had for a while. And on to tip number 5, which is to be very careful when you're going around loops, kind of like the top of the H. I found that in this spot in particular, where I'm going up on an upstroke and then curving back down on a downstroke, I struggled with this spot where my ink flow would kind of get a little bit sparse, which seemed like the foil wouldn't stick quite as well to it. So you'll see that around the top of the curve of some of my letters where the upstroke curves back down into a downstroke, there is some missing foil. I did try to go back over it and then add some more foil to it, I think on the craft paper version of this, and it didn't work perfectly. So in these areas, I'd recommend just going at a pace where you can make sure that you have a nice solid line coming out of your quickie glue pen. I attempted to practice going a little bit slower than I was at the beginning, just being a little bit more careful. I tried to concentrate really well and made sure that I was keeping a good ink flow even throughout those loops. And tip number 6 is to use a darker paper if you're struggling to see the ink coming out of your pen. When you're lettering or drawing with this quickie glue pen, it does dry pretty clear and it actually happens pretty quickly. And it can be really hard to see on a piece of white paper or kind of a lighter paper. I found that it was a bit easier to see when I was lettering on a darker colored paper. So if you are struggling to try to practice but you're just not able to see, I would recommend using a darker paper. Plus a bonus is that foil looks absolutely stunning when it's up against dark paper, at least in my opinion. And tip number 7 is to store your foil very carefully. Be gentle with it and try not to let it crinkle. If you let it get crunched up like I may have done, you might notice in mine that some of the coloring comes off the back of the foil. This can make it so that you have like breaks or lines in your foiling if you use that part. So I would recommend just trying to be really gentle with your rolls of foil so that you don't end up wasting a bunch. If they do come in a plastic container, I might even consider just keeping that and saving it in there if you can put them back carefully. And a bonus tip, if you have not figured this out already, is when you're cutting the foil, you may want to cut it where the colored part of the foil, like the color that you're using, is down on your desk, and then you have the silver part up towards you, kind of like you're cutting wrapping paper. It did work a little bit easier for me, but it is kind of hard to cut this delicate foil. So if you guys have any other tips, feel free to share them with others in the comments below, because I think that foiling is something that can be really fun, really beautiful, but also a little bit tricky, and sometimes those little tips and tricks just completely make a difference. I hope that these tips helped you to learn a new way to create some fun and beautiful hand lettering without a ton of products. I actually do have both a laminator and a mink foil machine, but it's just such a process to create the lettering on my iPad and then print it out with a toner printer and then get the machine out and then run the foil through it. And honestly, I struggled a bit anyways getting consistent foiling when I was using the mink machine. So I just really don't use it very often and haven't used it in quite a long time. When I first purchased it, I also got like a toner marker that you could use kind of to do the same type of a thing, but it was really hard to letter with, so while the foiling might have been okay on top of it, I couldn't really get the kind of lettering that I was looking for. So I think this is a really great option, and actually some of you guys told me that I could do this on, I believe, my video where I did the pen haul of these, and I had told you that I got them for embossing. And so thank you so much for those of you who told me that I could use this for foiling, because that is an awesome tip. I had not seen it, I don't think, or heard of it before you told me. So seriously, thank you so much, because I would not have been able to make this video if you guys wouldn't have shared that with me. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. If you are looking for more tips for hand lettering, you can check out the free resources that I created for you that I will link below. Some favorites around here are my free 7-day hand lettering mini course and my free resource library where I share printables to help you practice your lettering. I will also leave some playlists below if you would like to find more lettering videos to watch here on my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.